Okay, so just real quick, this video is how to wash and lanolize wool. I'm making it for a friend who is going to start using wool covers. And so if you are not interested in learning about that, go ahead and skip this video. It is not for you. But like I said, it's easier to explain by showing. A lot of people are really intimidated by wool. They think it's a lot of work and they think that it's going to be hard and it's going to be time consuming. And you know, it is a little bit time consuming, but not much at all. And I want to say that this is the one solution that we have where we can go 12 hours overnight with 0 leaks ever. So this is the most amazing cloth diapering solution, and I started doing it overnight, but now we have been slowly switching over to all wool all the time because it's just such a great option. You know, just like when you go into the world of cloth diapering, it seems really overwhelming, but once you start cloth diapering, you know, it's a really easy everyday routine and you barely think twice. So this is how to wash and lanolize a piece of wool for overnight use. So hopefully somebody finds this helpful. Okay, so this is my kind of unscripted video of how to wash and lanolize wool. I have to wash one of our covers because it had some poop on it. So what I have already done is I filled the sink with basically room temperature water, and I put in a couple teaspoons of Eucalan, or however you say it, delicate wash. Some people don't like this. They prefer the like sloomb, I think it's called unicorn wash, or also e-cover delicate wash is one that people really like, but this is the one I bought, so I'm using it up before I try something else, and I haven't really had any issues with it yet, so, but I will probably try the e-cover one next. So I put about a capful or two under the running water, which like I said, was room temperature water, and then you put the wool down and you kind of gently squeeze out the air so that it saturates. And then on this leg hole, so that's where the poop was, I just put it underwater and basically squeeze it like this, because you don't want to felt the wool because that will take out the stretch and make it smaller. So what you want to avoid is drastic temperature changes, like sudden temperature changes, agitation, those types of things will felt wool. So where the stain was, I kind of put it under here and just sort of squeezed at it like this, gently, to get the poop out. And he is exclusively breastfed, so that was pretty easy to do. And then I just sort of do like this, like I just push on it a little bit, and this is inside out because, you know, majority of the yuckiness is on the inside. So I do that a little bit, and then you go ahead and just let it sit for about 15 minutes. And while I'm doing that, I get the lanolin bath ready, which is going to lanolize the wool. So I will show you how I do that. The first thing I'm going to do is get the hot water going in my sink, and just take a microwave safe bowl, put, you know, like basically 2 cups of water or so in there, 3 cups. Not really an exact science. Okay, so I'm going to put the water in the microwave for 2 minutes just to get it nice and hot, and I'll talk about what we're using. So the things you need are, I use a little whisk to mix with. This knife is to cut off the sloomb cube. This is a sloomb cube. It's basically an emulsifier, so it's going to help to make the lanolin mix with the water so that it kind of dissolves and you can soak your wool in it. Sloomb cube you can use for that. Some people use like Johnson's baby shampoo or other, you know, baby wash products, but I'm just going to go with what I know. I use a sloomb cube and solid lanolin, and that has worked the best for me. I don't need to add anything else. Some people add a squirt of baby shampoo, but I tried that and it didn't work for me, so this is what I do. Okay, so this is what the lanolin looks like on the inside. It is solid lanolin. I tried using the cheap stuff that you can get from the store for your nipples, but it did not work very well. So this is relatively inexpensive. I want to say it's $7 for 2 ounces, and you're going to use 1 teaspoon, so that's roughly 20 uses, 20 pieces of wool. I'm lanolizing 1 piece of wool, that one in the sink, so I'm going to use around 1 teaspoon of lanolin, and I'm going to use about this much of a sloomb cube, and a sloomb cube is $10, so you can see that goes a pretty decently long way. And this is probably a little more than you need, but I just like to use a lot of it because it smells so yummy. And I am lanolizing for nighttime use. You can use less lanolin. Some people don't even use that. They just use the sloomb cube to lanolize because this does have lanolin in it for light wetters or daytime use, but I just always use a teaspoon because better safe than sorry, and it can't hurt. So once that's done in the microwave, I will show you the next step. Okay, so the water is super hot now, and I have about a teaspoon of lanolin. I don't have an actual measurement for a teaspoon, so this is a half tablespoon measure, but that's roughly a teaspoon. And you are going to drop it into the water. And I need 2 hands to do this, so I will be right back. Okay, so I got most of it off of the scooper, except a little bit that I'll just let melt. And you can see it floating in the hot water, and I am just going to leave it and let it melt on its own. I've had the best results that way. So, like I said before, I'm just going to go through the way that works best for me. I have tried lots of different things, wasted a lot of lanolin, and just kind of trying to figure out what works best. So, you know, you might need to change things to make it work for you, but this works for me. So I'm going to let that melt, and then we will add the Sloomb cube to emulsify. Okay, so you can see that it is mostly melted. I'm going to go over here and take that little chunk of Sloomb cube and drop that into the hot water. And this is where my whisk comes in handy. I'm just going to start whisking, and you can see it's starting to turn kind of a milky color right away. And I'm just going to keep doing this, kind of just mixing it around for a few minutes until it is an opaque white, and all these little droplets that are floating on the top, which are the lanolin, are totally dissolved and kind of melted in. So I will come back and show you what that looks like. Okay, so I have been stirring for 3 to 4 minutes, and this is what it looks like. As you can see, it's completely opaque. It looks just like I poured a bunch of milk in here. As you can see, there are no more of those yellow floaties, which means the lanolin is all dissolved. If there are some, then you need to add more of the Sloomb cube or whatever you're using to emulsify in there. So that is my lano bath, and that is all ready to go. And I generally do that while the wool is soaking because it saves time, and then I can get everything going at once. So now what I'm going to do is move that aside and drain the sink. And this e-cover rinse, or Eucalan, sorry, wash is no rinse, but I always rinse because otherwise I kind of feel like the grime is still sitting in the wool. So I am going to get the faucet going, do that just room temperature water. Okay, so that is roughly the same temperature. So I am going to go ahead and just rinse this piece of wool off. It doesn't have to be like anything extraordinary. Okay, so now that it's rinsed, I usually just fold it and kind of carefully press in the sink to get as much water out as I can. You never want to wring the wool because that can mess with it so that it doesn't hold its shape. You just kind of want to press it, and you can lay it in a towel and roll it up, but I generally don't do that during the step because then I have to use more than one towel and it just doesn't seem completely necessary. Sometimes I squeeze it a little bit too. Okay, so I've gotten most of the water out, and now I just set it aside for now, and now I'm going to fill the sink back up with that room temperature water, and I just want to fill it enough that the wool can soak in it. Okay, so now I've got enough water that the wool can soak in it. It's enough to cover it, but not an excessive amount of water. So at this point, this is still really hot, and now the little instruction card you get from Sloomb on how to lanolize your wool says to go ahead and pour this into the water and then soak your wool. But the problem with that is there's such a dramatic difference in temperature from this to that the wool is going to get shocked, and as soon as you pour it in, it's going to clump up like butter, and then you've wasted it. And I've done this countless times because I just didn't realize that you really can't change the temperature much at all or the lanolin will react. So what I do right now is I take a handful of ice, and people will say, oh, add 1 ice cube to the water to bring the temperature close, but I usually add like 8 ice cubes because that's what it takes for me to get to that same temperature. Why the ice cubes don't shock the wool, or the lanolin, I don't know, but they don't. So I add the ice cubes and stir it around. They melt pretty quickly. Okay, now that those are melted, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of do a touch test and compare that to the temperature of the water, and that does feel pretty close. So I am going to go ahead, and normally what I would do is pour it in to the water slowly while agitating the water, but I only have one hand, so what I usually do is I test it first. I just pour a little bit of it in and make sure that it's not going to shock the lanolin and start clumping up. And it'll take a little bit, so even if it doesn't look like it's doing it right away, you want to wait and make sure that's not happening, because you might need to change the temperature of your Lano bath, cool it off a little or warm it up. And that actually looks like we might be at the right temperature. If you have all the time in the world, you can set the Lano bath in the water so that it reaches the exact same temperature, but I just don't have the time for that. And as you can see, it mixed in nicely. There are no clumps coming around the edge of the sink. If that does happen, you gotta empty your sink and start all over with the Lano bath, which is kind of frustrating because you're wasting the lanolin, you're wasting the Sloomb cube, but you know, if you make sure that they are the exact same temperature, just, you know, by testing with your fingers, then that won't happen. And you can adjust the amount of ice cubes you add to make them the same temperature. And so that's all you've got to do. So that's our Lano bath. It's ready to go. I'm gonna take the piece of wool inside out still and go ahead and place it in the Lano bath. And this actually makes your hands really nice and soft, and it smells great. So I'm gonna just push on it around there to squeeze out that excess air or the old water that's in there. And you can weigh it down with something, but I usually just leave it like this. It's usually in there good enough. So now I'm gonna leave this, you can leave it anywhere from, you know, I think they say at least a half hour, but I usually do like 3 hours. You can leave it overnight, but I just don't like it to drag on to the next day. So I'll probably leave this for 3 hours. Then what I'm going to do is come back and drain the sink, no rinsing. I'm going to fold it up in the sink again and squeeze it out, lay it out in a towel, roll up the towel to get out any extra water, and then I just lay it flat on a drying rack to dry. And it usually takes a couple days to dry because this wool is multi-layered. Sometimes I'll turn the fan on in front of it to make it dry quicker, but that's that. And I know it seems complicated, but really, it's not a long process once you get the hang of it. I can do this in about 20 minutes with the baby, although it helps now that he is sleeping, but you know, it's not too difficult, and you can do multiple pieces at one time. How you would do that is you don't have to change the amount of water. You're still going to have enough water just to cover what you're lanolizing. I don't change the amount of hot water I use. All I do is I double the amount of lanolin. I'll use 2 teaspoons for 2 pieces, and then a little more emulsifier, and you can just keep adding that as much as you need. So it's not too much harder to do more pieces of wool. You can do this in just a regular bucket if you don't want to have your kitchen space being used up, or like a cheap laundry bucket or anything like that. So if you have any questions, just let me know, but that is how you wash and lanolize wool.